Hey friends, welcome back. So I just finished watching the new Sister Wives episode. And honestly, I'm not okay. If you ever wanted to see the emotional collapse of a 20-plus year marriage play out on screen in real time, this is it. Christine and Janelle didn't just walk away from Kody. They handed him a mirror and said, "This is who you are, I deal with it." And I swear this episode felt like the emotional hangover we've all been waiting for. Because for once, there was no rage, no pleading, no more trying to make it work. They were done, completely and utterly done. You could see it in their eyes, that calm, exhausted kind of peace that arrives when you finally stopped begging to be understood. Now, before diving into the analysis, I'll admit, this episode hit me somewhere personal. You know that moment when someone keeps patching up something broken, pretending it's still fixable? That struck a chord. My mom once told me after her own breakup, sometimes the silence after the fight hurts worse than the fight itself. And that's exactly what this episode felt like. Quiet devastation. We open with Christine sitting outside her new home in Utah, coffee in hand, sunlight on her face. And I swear that woman looked like she had just taken her first real breath in 26 years. Meanwhile, back in Flagstaff, Kody's pacing like a man who's just realized the group project doesn't actually need him anymore. And then there's Janelle, calm, reflective, but with that steady expression that says, "I've got nothing left to give you." She was always the practical one, the peacemaker, the one who didn't chase drama. She just wanted things to work. But what she got in return was distance, disrespect, and neglect dressed up as leadership. What's fascinating is how Christine and Janelle tell the same story through completely different lenses. Christine talks about love, what it was, what it became, and how it finally disappeared. Janelle talks about partnership, the teamwork, the balance, the mutual respect it takes to survive, and how Kody simply stopped showing up. And the tragic part? He still doesn't get it. He talks as though they wronged him. Within 10 minutes, I was yelling at my TV, "Sir, you did this yourself!" But it gets heavier. Because in this episode, Christine and Janelle don't just walk away. They explain why. And it's nothing like the version of events Kody's been selling to anyone who'll listen. Christine had been saying for years that she felt invisible. But this time you could see it. She stopped trying to fix things. The dinners became shorter, the smiles became polite, and the word "we" quietly faded into "me." Meanwhile, Janelle was just trying to hold everything together. The house, the kids, the chaos, with a husband who thought showing up once a week counted as being a partner. She wasn't asking for grand gestures, just basic respect. But Kody lived in a world of his own design, and she finally stopped subscribing to it. There's one scene where Kody starts talking about loyalty. Classic Kody. Everything is framed in terms of how he's been hurt. And Christine, bless her, just sits there with that calm smile, the kind that says, "You don't even know what love is anymore." What's remarkable is how both women broke for entirely different reasons. Christine's heart cracked under the weight of emotional distance. Janelle's patience wore out from constant imbalance. Two sides of the same exhaustion, one born of neglect, the other of control. If you've ever been in a one-sided relationship, you know that pain. The silence, the forced smiles at family dinners, the "we're fine" that everyone knows is a lie. That's the moment you realize, peace and distance are better than chaos and company. Christine's departure wasn't explosive. It was composed, honest, final. She stopped sugarcoating her feelings. That's what it means to be truly done, when you stop editing your truth to protect someone else's ego. She said she used to think she was the problem, too needy, too emotional, too jealous. Then she looked around and realized she was only asking for the same respect Kody gave Robyn without question. The imbalance wasn't imagined. It was right there at every dinner, every family decision where her opinion didn't matter. She tells this small story about trying to plan a simple holiday gathering. Nothing dramatic, just logistics. But Kody dismissed her with that half smile that says, "I've already made up my mind." Tiny dismissals like that become proof that you don't matter. And that kind of disregard? You can't fix it with apologies. Now, when you watch Christine talk, you see a woman reborn. Not wild or vengeful, just free. It's not rebellion. It's release. And that serenity, that quiet clarity, is exactly what terrifies Kody most. Because once someone like Christine no longer needs your approval, you lose all control. Then comes Janelle. Her story's told differently. She's not emotional or dramatic. She's steady, measured. But beneath that calm exterior sits 25 years of frustration. She's the one who treated plural marriage like a job, Budgets, schedules, logistics, trying to make chaos make sense. She believed love was a daily choice. She made that choice every single day. She showed up, raised the kids, kept the house running, all while Kody floated between homes congratulating himself for being present. She thought if she just stayed consistent, one day he'd see her worth. But the more stable she was, the more invisible she became. And the real turning point? The Coyote Pass fiasco. Janelle wanted to build. Kody wanted control. He kept saying, if you'd just trust me, everything would work out. Spoiler, it didn't. Because it was never about land, it was about respect. Every discussion became another reminder that her opinion only mattered when it matched his. There's a moment where she tells the producer, "I'm tired of being the only adult in the room." And you can feel it, not bitterness, but exhaustion. She's not trying to be cruel. She's just telling the truth. Janelle's always been the quiet, reasonable one, the fixer. But being the only grounded person in a relationship built on someone else's delusions, it drains you. And yet, even as she speaks, there's still that faint note of loyalty in her tone. She doesn't hate Kody, she's disappointed. Deeply, painfully disappointed, like someone who finally realized the blueprint she followed for decades was drawn by a man who never planned to build anything real. When she finally tells Christine she's choosing herself, she whispers it. No drama, no fight, just quiet resolve. That's Janelle's rebellion, leaving silently with her dignity intact. Christine leaves for love and self-respect. Janelle leaves for peace and sanity. Two different stories, one shared truth. I deserve better. And then there's Kody. The man still doesn't understand. He says Janelle's too independent, as if that's an insult. He says he can't lead a wife who won't follow. But that's the point. He never knew how to walk beside someone. By the end, you realize Janelle didn't just lose hope in the marriage. She lost hope that this man was ever capable of partnership. And that final quietness you see on her face? That's not defeat. That's freedom. The kind of peace that comes when the storm finally ends. And you never want to go back inside. And you never want to go back inside. For Kody, it wasn't a dramatic collapse. It was the silence that came after the storm. For seasons, we've heard him repeat the same mantras about loyalty, faith, and principle. But this time, there was no one left to persuade. The audience could see it, the shift, the emptiness. For years, the wives waited for him to arrive. Now he's the one waiting for a reaction that never comes. When someone has emotionally checked out, you can feel it even through a TV screen. His words grew defensive, then confused, then unexpectedly wistful. That's what losing control looks like. Denial first, then blame, and finally the dawning realization that the story has moved on without you. That's not just a breakup. It's an ego unraveling. Because when the people who once depended on you stop needing your validation, the foundation of your authority crumbles. Christine and Janelle's departure didn't just end marriages. It exposed the old hierarchy for what it was. Suddenly, scenes showed Kody wandering through half-empty rooms, replaying speeches about betrayal. The editing lingered on silence. Empty chairs, hollow words, quiet spaces that mirrored his isolation. And then it hits him, they're not coming back. Not to fight. Not to fix things. Not even to film another apology. It's that moment every viewer recognizes. The day you realize the love you were chasing wasn't really love anymore, just habit. Both women experienced that defining switch. The subtle transformation from, maybe we can fix this, to, I'm finished. For Christine, it came when she saw her children beginning to mirror her sadness. She tells a story about one of them asking why she and Kody didn't laugh together anymore. That question hit her like a punch to the chest. She had spent years teaching her children that love was supposed to feel safe, kind, and full of joy. And suddenly she realized she was showing them the opposite. That wasn't anger, it was clarity. If she wanted her children to recognize healthy love, she had to show them what it looked like. Janelle's turning point was quieter, practical even. It happened during one of those endless family meetings about money and property. Kody was spinning yet another grand vision, one that somehow served him more than anyone else. Janelle didn't argue. She just went silent. In that silence, you could almost see her counting the years. The responsibilities, the sacrifices, the quiet competence. She didn't need this anymore. Not the promises, not the plans. That's when she stopped negotiating for fairness. Their paths were different, but the destination was the same. Christine's freedom came from emotional honesty. Janelle's came from logical resolve. And both led to peace. Every long relationship reaches that crossroad. the moment you realize staying costs more than leaving. And from there, something unexpected grew. Friendship. Their bond, once defined by rules and rivalry, turned into quiet solidarity. They began speaking openly, supporting one another not to fix the past but to build something new. Two women walking away from the same storm, breathing freely for the first time in years. That friendship became one of the strongest connections the show has ever seen. Before, their relationship existed only within boundaries. Schedules, obligations, the endless rotation around one man's approval. Once that structure collapsed, they finally had room to be real. You could see it in small moments. Christine helping Janelle with housing plans, Janelle checking on Christine's new life in Utah, the two of them laughing together, relaxed and genuine. They weren't performing anymore. They were just living. After decades of being measured by how well they fit into someone else's idea of family, they were finally defining life on their own terms. They spoke about the past without bitterness, about faith without guilt, and about the future with quiet hope. And maybe that's the deeper lesson. Healing doesn't always happen in solitude. Sometimes the ones who help you heal are the ones who endured the same pain beside you. Christine and Janelle didn't walk away from love. They walked toward truth, toward self-respect, toward peace. They once shared a husband. Now they share coffee, laughter, and freedom. And for the first time in years, that's enough. Their transformation is subtle but powerful, the proof that something beautiful can grow from something broken. Endings, after all, are just beginnings in disguise. Kody's reaction to their independence speaks volumes. Outwardly, he seems torn between confusion, pride, and frustration, as if he can't decide whether to admire them or resent them. At first, he calls it betrayal. He talks about loyalty, about how they gave up. But the more he speaks, the clearer it becomes. It's not their departure that wounds him. It's their indifference. He isn't angry that they left. He's angry that they no longer need him. He even admits to feeling disrespected by Janelle's independence, that word he loves so much. To him, independence is rejection. To them, it's survival. For years, they built their lives with him. Now they're building them without him. And here's the irony. Kody always claimed he wanted strong, independent wives. He got them, just not the way he imagined. Their strength no longer orbits around him. Christine thrives in Utah, genuinely happy, her laughter unforced. Janelle stands firm, focused on her children and her own plans. And Kody? He's left trying to make sense of a world that no longer follows his script. Listen to his interviews and you can hear the pattern. Defensiveness, self-pity, the endless refrain of how unfair it all is. But beneath the bluster, what you hear is a man slowly realizing that the system he built doesn't work anymore. It's not rage, it's the loss of control. And here it's okay to feel a hint of empathy. Watching people you once loved move on is hard. Harder still when they're doing better without you. That's the truth sitting quietly beneath his words. Kody isn't furious that they left. He's devastated that their absence exposes what was broken all along. This is the turning point. The first time the wives stop orbiting Kody's world, and he starts revolving around theirs. And he doesn't quite know how to live in that reality. When the dust settled, what remained wasn't just a split family, it was a ripple that spread through everyone connected to them. The older children weren't surprised. They'd watched their mother's silent heartbreak for years, and when things finally shattered, many of them felt relief. The younger ones were confused. Their idea of family disappeared overnight. Christine tried to soften the blow, reassuring them that love wasn't the problem. The structure was. Janelle stayed steady, protecting her children from chaos with calm consistency. But Kody struggled. His identity had always been tied to family unity. Watching it fall apart wounded his pride as much as his heart. The wives used to rally behind him even when they disagreed. Now no one was listening, and that silence was louder than any fight. You can see it in how the family interacts now, the hesitation, the unspoken question. Who's still in and who's out? Even holidays, once the glue that held them together, became complicated negotiations. Who hosts? Who attends? Who actually belongs? Some of the kids miss the old days, not because they were good, but because they were whole. Others say it's better now because at least it's honest. And that's the bittersweet truth. Honesty heals, but first it breaks everything open. Christine and Janelle's choice forced everyone else to confront the truth. What's left when the illusion ends? Kody insists the family's story isn't over. Maybe he's right, but it's no longer his story. It's already something new. Not the dream he sold them years ago. but a group of people trying to learn how to love differently. It's messy, it's painful, but it's real. And of course, Robyn's name always comes up. Not because she's new or because she's legal, but because her arrival tilted the balance that was already fragile. At first, she seemed like a breath of fresh air, kind, spiritual, optimistic. But over time, what looked like peacekeeping began to resemble quiet control. Christine has said before that Kody changed after Robyn came along, not overnight, but gradually. Every big decision started depending on Robyn's opinion. If she disapproved, it simply didn't happen. Kody began saying we when he really meant Robyn and me. To the other wives, it felt like erasure, not jealousy, but loss. Watching him build a new marriage while their own faded into the background. Robyn's supporters say she was simply loyal to Kody when others weren't. That may be true, but it's also true she benefited most from his favoritism. The expensive house, the emotional attention, everything that was supposed to be shared became exclusive. Christine once said it wasn't about Robyn herself. It was about what her presence revealed. The cracks were already there. Robyn just made them impossible to ignore. Over time, Kody and Robyn became one unit, one voice, leaving the others as outsiders in their own marriage. Even viewers could see it. His posture, his tone, his alliances. It was no longer a family of equals. It was Kody and Robyn at the center, everyone else orbiting around them. By the time Christine left, that hierarchy was set in stone. By the time Janelle followed, the real question wasn't why they left. It was how they lasted so long. Robyn often says she never wanted to divide the family, that she longed for sisterhood. Maybe she means it. But even good intentions can't survive in a system built on imbalance. And that's the tragedy. She didn't destroy the family. She simply revealed what was already fractured. After years of living in a world where every choice depended on Kody's approval, Christine and Janelle had to relearn something most people take for granted: how to make choices for themselves. Christine went first. When she left for Utah, people said she was escaping. But she wasn't running from something. She was walking toward peace. For the first time in decades, she had space of her own. No family meetings, no rules. Just quiet mornings, her children, and the freedom to define happiness. Her transformation was visible. The light returned to her eyes. Her laughter sounded genuine. She started dating, rediscovering what it felt like to be loved without competition. Janelle's path was quieter, but just as profound. She focused on stability, financial, emotional, personal. For years, she had been the silent backbone, the one holding things together. Now that same strength became her safety net. She reconnected with her older children, rebuilding trust and laughter. You could see how much lighter she became, as if she'd finally set down a burden she never should have carried. And that's what makes both stories powerful. They're not about revenge. They're about recovery. They didn't leave to prove a point. They left because they'd finally realized how small they'd been forced to live. Christine says the biggest adjustment is the silence. Not the kind that feels empty, but the kind that feels peaceful. When solitude stops feeling like punishment, that's when healing is real. Their lives aren't perfect now. There are still awkward calls, co-parenting messes, and gossip. But there's also laughter, strength, and a quiet kind of joy that only comes from surviving heartbreak. They're not starting over. They're starting right. And perhaps the greatest irony of all is this: the very independence that once threatened Kody is what saved them both in the end. For Kody, this was never going to end with shouting. It ended with silence. The kind of silence that doesn't echo, just sits there, heavy and unresolved. In that quiet, you can see a man who's spent years talking about loyalty, unity, and faith, suddenly left with no one left to convince. The fascinating thing for longtime viewers is how the dynamic reversed. For years, the wives waited for him to arrive. Now, he's the one waiting, for a reaction that never comes. You can almost see the moment it dawns on him. They're not coming back. Not to fight, not to make amends, not even to film another "we'll work through this" scene. That's when it hits. Not the loss of love, but the loss of control. Because that's the truth about hierarchy-based relationships. When the people who once sought your validation no longer need it, your ego doesn't just bruise or it collapses. It's not heartbreak. It's ego death. Christine and Janelle's departures forced everyone, even the audience, to confront what the old power balance really was. The show's editing changed too. Suddenly, there was Kody walking alone through empty rooms, replaying lines about betrayal and loyalty to no one in particular. The spaces around him were hollow. And that emptiness mirrored what he'd created, a world built on being needed. Christine's breaking point wasn't explosive. It was maternal. When one of her children asked, "Why don't you and Dad laugh anymore?" It pierced through years of quiet endurance. She realized she'd been teaching her children to accept emotional distance as normal. That was the moment she chose honesty over habit. Janelle's awakening was quieter, more practical. Another endless conversation about property, about finances, about fairness, and she just stopped talking. Years of loyalty, of compromise, crystallized into a single thought: I don't need this anymore. One woman chose emotion. The other chose logic. But both chose peace. Their friendship became the truest love story left in Sister Wives. What began as polite cooperation evolved into something deeper: sisterhood without the wife. They didn't heal by fixing each other. They healed by walking in the same direction, away from chaos. Christine helping Janelle find housing, Janelle checking in on Christine's new life in Utah. It wasn't for the cameras. It was real. They once shared a husband. Now they share coffee, laughter, and peace. And that's the quiet revolution no one expected. While Christine and Janelle's stories became about rebirth, Kody and Robyn's turned into reckoning. The two people who clung hardest to the system are the ones now buried under its ruins. They sit in that large house, the supposed symbol of security, and it feels haunted. Not by ghosts, but by choices. Robyn looks tired. She once dreamed of sisterhood and belonging, not of being the last one left standing. And Kody, he still talks about loyalty and betrayal, but not accountability. He grieves not the wives, but the image of himself as the leader of something grand. The family dream they once sold to the world has crumbled into quiet fragments, missed holidays, awkward silences, and too many questions about who's still in. Even the fans felt the tremor. When Christine and Janelle finally walked away, the internet erupted. Some cheered, others defended Kody, but underneath it all was something more personal. People weren't watching reality TV anymore. They were watching their own lives mirrored back. Christine's calm decision, "I deserve better," became a mantra for thousands. Janelle's quiet enough resonated with those who'd spent decades prioritizing duty over joy. Kody's arc, meanwhile, became a study in self-sabotage, a man who built authority at the cost of connection. His interviews shifted from confident to confused to hollow. Fans didn't hate him. They pitied him, because nothing hurts quite like realizing the world moved on without you. And then there's Robyn, once the favorite, now the loneliest. The woman who wanted unity got exclusivity instead, and it feels like a cage. Being the only one left isn't victory. It's exile. But here's the twist. Sister Wives stopped being about polygamy a long time ago. It became about power, communication, and what happens when love and ego get tangled. Christine and Janelle's courage became collective therapy. Viewers began asking bigger questions. How long should you stay loyal to pain? When does love become control? And what does freedom look like when you've forgotten what it means? Now, as the credits roll on this chapter, what's left isn't a failed marriage, it's evolution. For 15 years, this family was a living experiment in faith and compromise. But experiments end when subjects stop pretending the hypothesis still works. Christine rebuilt herself in Utah, joy visible, laughter genuine. Janelle found peace in independence. Robyn holds on to what remains, and Kody, perhaps for the first time, sits with his own silence. It's poetic in a way. The man who once filled every room now stands alone, stripped of the noise, forced to listen to what's been there all along, the sound of everything he wouldn't face. This isn't tragedy. It's transformation. Christine found love again. Janelle found stability. Robyn found perspective. And Kody maybe someday will find humility. Because in the end, Sister Wives was never about plural marriage. It was about human beings trying, and often failing, to be understood. And perhaps that's the real beauty of this ending. Sometimes a family must fall apart so everyone inside it can finally stand on their own.